Okay, welcome back to the eTeam Sponsor Podcast. I'm Sean Connors, co-founder and CEO with eTeam Sponsor. Pleasure to be joined today by Ron Nocetti, the pride of San Francisco and Sacred Heart. He is the Executive Director of the CIF. Ron, thanks for hopping on.
Sean, I appreciate you having me today. It's always a pleasure to talk about high school sports.
Yeah, you got it, man. It's everybody loves talking about high school sports, right? This is everybody's got a connection to high school sports in some way. So why don't we jump in there? Your high school sports. So Sacred Heart, grew up in the city. What was it like going to the famed Sacred Heart, now I guess Sacred Heart Cathedral?
Yeah, it was, well, I'll tell you, it was different back when I went to school. I was a class of 86. Sports were obviously an important thing, but nothing like today as far as the involvement of parents and outside influences on sports. Back when I went, it was an oddity for someone to be a single sport athlete. Now it's an oddity for someone to be a multi-sport athlete. Although I'll say I'm very lucky that I went to high school at the time I did, because I don't see what these kids can do today on a basketball court or a baseball field. I don't know if I'd make a team, let alone play. They're amazing.
It's become extremely competitive. There's a lot of one sport focused student athletes now. Probably not as many dual sport athletes as you saw back in your day.
Right.
Did you play against anybody? Maybe Fame or Acclaim back in the day there in the old? I don't know if that was the old City League or what league you guys were in.
We played in the West Catholic Athletic League.
Okay, WCAL.
A lot of, probably too many to mention, but some of my own teammates played at the same high school where, Sean Gogan was a senior when I was a freshman. He was a lineman with the Cowboys for a long time. Kevin Gogan. Kevin Gogan, yeah. Sean's his older brother, was my teacher.
Okay.
Picks up those names. But, there was, the city has had, a lot of incredible athletes and, better for the most part, what I love most about San Francisco is just the small feel of it. When you meet someone from San Francisco or just the greater Bay Area, within 5 minutes of talking to that person, there's a connection. And it's a big city with a small feel to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved my time, and in fact, I got a picture right over my shoulder there with the foot action and the 49er hat right in front of it. Played in a high school quarterback challenge at Kezar Stadium. And I remember Jerry Rice came down, and just what it was so cool driving into the city and knowing, how many great athletes have played or participated in sports at the high school level, just in that, like you said, the big little city of San Francisco. Well, Ron, hey, we appreciate you coming on, and figure we'll jump into talk a little bit about just, think a lot of changes in your first year. I know you've been with the CIF since 2008 and just started the 2019-2020 academic year. And hey, let's just jump right into a worldwide pandemic. So how are things going in year one?
It's all things considered, it's been a good year. I've got a good team of people around me. We've got a great group of section commissioners. California is very different than pretty much every other state out there, with the exception of New York, in that we're a federation. So, we have to work closely and enjoy working closely with our 10 section commissioners. And nothing happens without them. They're a great group of people who work hard together. And now so more than ever, given what we're facing, their collegiality and cooperation has just been unmatched. And the ability for everyone to stay so positive during this time and patient, and waiting to see the direction that we're going to be given by entities above us is much appreciated by me and our staff and our leadership.
Awesome. Yeah, we've had the fortune of being able to talk with a number of the section commissioners, and to your point, they've absolutely been extremely positive and poised, because there's a lot coming at them, I'm sure. And so speaking of that, what have been some of the challenges that you faced in the last 8 weeks, and how have you and your staff gone about tackling those challenges?
The biggest challenge is just everyone wanting answers and expecting answers. And we completely understand that. Everyone wants answers when things are unknown. And our goal during this time is to really try and exercise patience and not jump the gun on decisions, and wait for the right information and the right data, and to be in cooperation with our state government and all of its stakeholders, the governor's office, the Department of Education, the California Department of Public Health, because that's where we're going to take our cues from to see when and how high school sports can return, because the safety and health of our student athletes is going to be at the forefront.
Wow. The enormity of it all, just right there, I could feel the pressure. As you said, all those different organizations that you're working with. How do you do it, man? How do you get through each day, and what are you leaning on? How are you managing, all of those different relationships and organizations, and being able to keep a clear mind to make decisions?
It all comes down to, I think, having the right people around you. And obviously I have an incredible staff who handles most of the work on a daily basis. They're still working right now, and they're going ahead and developing every possible contingency plan for the fall, if and when we can move forward. And again, it goes back to our sections. Remember that most of the questions that we get are going to our section commissioners, and so we just want to be as much of a support as we can to them. And I think, when people have called us, and trust me, we get plenty of calls, plenty of emails, asking for answers. And, I think we're just answering honestly, and we're being transparent. We're explaining why there's not a decision at this time. And that, I don't think people want us to make a decision right now, because if we did, it very likely may not be the decision they want to hear.
Sure.
Let's let this move forward, and let's the information that we're getting, and I think everyone's getting, not just in California, but across the country. It's so fluid, and it changes so often that let's see where we are several weeks down the road before jumping into decision making for 3 to 4 months down the road.
Got it. So I've got a couple questions. Being a former football and baseball guy, I'll ask you about those two sports, or we'll just say spring and fall sports. Any message that you'd share with the student athletes and coaches that unfortunately had their spring seasons canceled?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's who we feel for the most, right? The student athletes. It's something that's completely beyond their control, completely beyond everyone's control. And what they're gonna, we say sports teaches life lessons, and talk about the life lessons of resiliency and bouncing back. But I'll tell you, the messages that I've received that have been the most positive of all throughout this whole process, for example, when we were looking at whether or not to cancel spring sports, are the messages that we got from our student athletes. To a T, every student athlete who emailed or called, it was, hey, we know that all of you are looking out for us in the best interest of our health and safety. And we just ask that you don't give up on us too soon. And we didn't. I think we waited. We were pushed to make a decision in March, and we postponed it as long as we could. But once we saw that schools weren't going to return for the spring semester, that decision was really made for us. And I've been so proud of the way our student athletes have reacted. It's amazing to watch social media and watch how they're interacting with each other, and also even with rival schools, and trying to do kind of virtual competitions. We've seen some very creative things with, for example, I saw a couple of rival swim teams do a relay, and they just did a mock relay. They made up, one girl was backstroking across her living room floor, or you'd see all the videos of the kids throwing, passing a volleyball or throwing a baseball or softball or a football from screen to screen. Our kids are creative, and they're finding a way to stay connected, and that's what's most important.
That's great. That's great to hear. Yeah, a lot of positives to come in light of a very troubling or difficult situation. So looking forward to fall sports. I'm a football guy. So are we going to have football in 2020?
Well, it's something that obviously we're waiting to see what we hear from our state government. I think information we received yesterday was, while it was geared towards professional sports, it's a start. It gives some hope, and that's what we're looking for. And whether it's football or girls volleyball or water polo, tennis, cross country. I think, while I know right now most people are talking about football, every sport is important to the student athletes that play that sport. And I know you understand that and get that.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think we have to make sure that we're keeping that in mind, that that all sports are important to these young people, and we're going to do everything we can to make it happen.
Great, great. And I know you start each day with the end in mind, knowing that this is all going to come to an end at some point. What are you most looking forward to?
Going to a game. It's interesting because I think that's what we all miss. That's the fun part of what we do is, people talk about the pressure of this position. Frankly, we don't feel that because what we do is fun. I look at all the other ways that I could be making a living as compared to this. And frankly, there's nothing I'd rather be doing, but going to watch a softball game or a track meet or a swim meet or a water polo match is just, it's fun to watch these student athletes do what they love to do, and they do it for two simple reasons. And when it really comes down to it, they want to have fun and they want to be with their friends, and watching them do that is always so positive.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I promise no more questions about the current situation. So that'll,
that's all right.
We covered them all. That's great. It's good to hear that you've got such a bright and fresh perspective, a positive perspective as to what the future may hold. And I know that the CIF and its sections and the student athletes and coaches are in good hands with your leadership. So let's talk a little bit about your past. Let's talk about just how you got to where you're at today. Obviously, you've been at the CIF since 2008. You get elevated to the executive director position. Tell me a little bit about how athletics has unlocked opportunity for you professionally.
Absolutely. Well, it's something that I've done since I can remember. When I was growing up, there weren't video games. You didn't stay inside a house. You went out until the old adage that, it's time to come home when the street light went off. And for me, it was our grandmother lived with us, and we could be 3 blocks away, and she could open the front window and scream for my brother and I to come home, and we came running. But we were always at a playground, always doing something active with sports, being part of a team. And back then, if you remember, there weren't organized sports until probably the 4th grade, and we all did fine. We learned how to play the game at a schoolyard with no referees. We made the rules. If one team was better than another team, we adjusted the team so they're even. I think that's something our kids definitely miss. But that kind of was my start, and that's what taught me what the value of sports and activities in general, what it could do for you. And I was fortunate enough to be able to play a couple of different sports in high school and play baseball in college, and that's really what set me on this path. When I was a senior in college, I was all set to go to law school, and I said, my 2 games into my senior year, I broke my leg playing baseball. And I thought I'd redshirt play again. It never properly healed. I couldn't play again. And one of my old coaches encouraged me to come coach a couple of JV sports at my old high school. And I did that, and I got paid $1 because you had to be on the insurance plan, so they had to pay you something. In fact, I still have in my office a dollar bill framed by my team. They said, I think the frame says you're worth every penny, and they spelled "your" wrong. These are kids. But that's really what set me on that path to becoming a teacher and a coach, an administrator, an athletic director. It's amazing how one life altering moment can change the course of what you do.
No kidding. So now, where were you playing baseball when you broke your leg?
I played at the University of San Francisco.
USF, you're a Don.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. It was never left San Francisco at that time. I had no intention of ever wanting to leave San Francisco. It's just such a great city, and that's.
Oh my gosh, what a great time! You were going to college at USF in the late '80s in San Francisco.
Yep.
Man, what a time to be in the city.
Oh, it was great. It was great. And that's where I met my wife. She was a volleyball player, and unique story that I don't know if anyone else in the country can say this, that we were married by our college athletic director. Because
wow.
he was a Jesuit priest, Father Robert Sunderland. If you remember, they brought him back to lead the athletic department when the basketball program came off of probation.
Probation, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No kidding. How about that? Fun fact. I don't think that I've ever met anybody that's been married by an athletic director. I've heard like a coach or, former coach, somebody like that. But that is a good one. I'll definitely have to file that one away. USF. Oh my gosh, what great time to be there. You were there, I would imagine, during the Loma Prieta earthquake.
Yeah, in fact, we were on the baseball field. In fact, we were just finishing up, getting ready to go watch the
Yeah,
World Series game with some buddies, and
sure.
got to our place and felt the earth shaking, and obviously knew it wasn't just a normal San Francisco earthquake. And
No,
again, though, it's interesting you bring that up, because if you remember those times, it brought communities together. It
sure.
very similar to what we're seeing now. It's the way that communities, whether it's in the state or across the country, support each other in these times. That's always been there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much to be said about those types of when adversity hits. I think just the common resolve and resiliency that human beings have, let alone Americans. It really is. It's fascinating.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
well, great. Thanks for sharing that. You're in a leadership position. We talked about that. This being year one at the top of the CIF food chain, if you will. Um, Talk to us about leadership. What does leadership mean to you? Who have some of the influential leadership individuals in your life? Who have they been, and how have they influenced you in how you're leading today?
Sure. I think what it comes down to is, you say top of the food chain. I think very much, I see it the other way around. I flip it upside down, in that I'm at the bottom of the food chain, as far as it's my job to support the organization and every part of it from the ground up. It's our job to lead without things like ego, and without control, wanting to control. And leadership's not about power; it's about building up those around you. And I think that's what is missing in a lot of places right now,
Yeah,
is that it's more about the power and control of being a leader. When I think, when it comes down to it, I think many more people have the capacity to lead. They just have to be given the tools to do it, and to be put in the situations to show what they can do. And I think all people that truly are good leaders. I was given some very good advice in my life to surround yourself with people that are not afraid to disagree with you. When I put together teams or committees, I'm always looking for people that I know are going to take the opposite position. Because then the end product we come up with is always going to be better, because we've looked at it from all angles. So I think that's the biggest thing. And I'd say ultimately, as long as people in leadership roles present themselves from a position of ethics, integrity, transparency, you can't go wrong. People may not always like your answers, and a lot of times you're going to have to make decisions that aren't necessarily the most popular decisions. But if you've involved the right people along the way, and it's the right decision, then you stand by it and you move forward.
that sounds like you've created a heck of a horizontal leadership structure there. So you're surrounding yourself with people that are challenging you, have different viewpoints and thought processes. And you mentioned earlier too that these types of times that we're in now have created leadership opportunities. Who have you seen, whether it's by name or just by function within either the CIF, or have you seen people take advantage of these opportunities to lead?
Absolutely. I think right away I moved to our teachers and our coaches. When you look at what, and not just high school, obviously that's our world, but from elementary school teachers on up, they've all become leaders. They're all finding ways to stay connected to their student athletes and their classrooms. And so I think that's what's most important these times, is everyone stepping up and doing their part. And I think that's the only way that all of us can move forward.
Yeah. Your background, like you mentioned, Sacred Heart, USF, you've been at the CIF since 2008. Is there anybody from a leadership standpoint that influenced you in how maybe you're leading today, or has been an influential leader in your life?
Sure. It's interesting. You said I grew up with a single mom, and I was fortunate enough to have an extended family in my life. I had mentioned my grandmother earlier. Had my mom, who was a high school teacher of many years. My aunt was a high school teacher of many years, and my uncle was my father figure. And I'd say, my uncle was one that taught me that no matter what you do, you be good to people and you do the right thing. And we say all the time that teams have rules, people have rules. It all boils down to one thing and one rule. And if you could abide by that rule of doing the right thing,
Yeah.
I think we'd be living in a very different place. So while, that was a leadership, not from a perspective of someone that maybe led an organization or something like that. It was just, this is where you were taught to, in the household, to just be a good person. And, my grandmother, my aunt, my uncle, my mom, especially, that's what they taught me to do. And those were my models of leadership.
That's great. That's great. I love hearing that. It's the lead with integrity, or the golden rule. And leaders come in all shapes, sizes, and forms. And great to hear that you had some influential leadership in your life at a young age. That's awesome. Getting into some of the other aspects of leadership. It's a big thing for coaches and athletic directors, especially at the CIF level now, but even across the country. I mean, there's states that are reopening the economy again, and they're getting started. What kind of message would you share with those leaders as they prepare for, the eventual start of the academic year and the eventual start of athletics and getting back to the way we used to do things?
Well, I think they just have to do what they've been doing as far as the sharing of information. People are craving that right now, and I think and I think also, making sure that you're getting the information from the right people, and not just being, so many. I think there's some that want to put themselves out there, no matter what the topic, and they want to speak from authority where they maybe don't have the background to do so. And so I think that's where I've really appreciated the leadership from the state government, and that when necessary, they've brought in people from different professions, doctors, scientists. They're the ones that are presenting the appropriate data moving forward. And I think our governor has surrounded himself with those people. I think our state superintendent of public instruction, Tony Thurman, has done the same. And I think that's what's most important is, again, it's all who you're surrounded by, and letting those people provide you with the right information, and not feeling like you need to be the sole voice as a leader, and not having to control everything, but letting the experts present the right information.
That's great insight there. Great insight. In terms of the future of the CIF, there's a lot of we'll say pre-pandemic, or kind of, let's, as best we can, put that aside for a moment. What are some of the exciting things that you were working on at the CIF level, or what's your vision for where you'd like to see the CIF go in the future?
Sure. I think one thing, and it's still moving forward. We're still having our council meetings moving forward, and looking at legislation that we're moving through the process. The biggest one we have right now is a new policy regarding sportsmanship and game ejections and behavior on all levels. And what's most exciting about it is it's really about accountability, and about, I think if there's more expectations, and maybe even sometimes stiffer penalties when those expectations are not met, coaches are going to talk about it more. What did John Wooden used to say? It's not what you teach, it's what you emphasize.
It's what you emphasize. Yep,
and
absolutely.
And coaches, when they see that, hey, wait a second, I may lose one of my student athletes for more than just one game. I'm going to emphasize this more, and hopefully not just because they're going to lose them for a game, but because it's the right thing to do. I think that's what's most important. But also, the policy includes a parent and fan behavior, and it gives the schools some ability by CIF rules to say, hey, if parents and fans aren't behaving appropriately, then they need to go as well, and they're not going to come back right away. And it's amazing to me that I think in every household, I would hope that parents, guardians, caregivers are going to teach their kids about respect, probably first and foremost. Yet they feel like they can go to a game and be completely disrespectful to an official, to a coach, to kids. It baffles the mind that people think that. I think the other program that we're continually moving forward is something called the Inside Out Initiative. Joe Ehrman, who wrote the book Inside Out Coaching, and Jody Redman, she works with the Minnesota State High School Athletic Association as well. Great program, and it all boils down to who do we want coaching our young people? And it asks coaches to really look at themselves from the perspective of, what's it feel like to be coached by me? And it comes down to being a coach that we want coaches that are going to transform the lives of our student athletes, not someone that's going to see a student athlete as, hey, if that student athlete plays for me, I'm going to win a championship. We don't want transactional coaches. We want transformational coaches.
Love it. Transformational versus transactional. I love it. That's great. Looking at the opportunity for the CIF, future opportunity. You talked about some of the initiatives that you're focused on now. What are some of the future opportunities the CIF's looking at, and if any of them you can share with us?
Sure, absolutely. I think one of the things we're looking at moving forward, it may be slowed down a little bit until our student athletes can get back out there and back out in their communities. One thing that we were, and our schools were really behind it, and everywhere we went, there's not a person that didn't think it was a good idea, is having a, for lack of a better term, a CIF Day of Service, where and it didn't have to be a particular day, but sometime during the season that every school, every student athlete, every coach went out and performed some level of service within their community. I think we sometimes miss the connection that high school sports has with the local community. And when you really think about it, we have over 800,000 student athletes, 65,000 coaches. We'd have nearly 1 million people if each of those parties would do 5 hours of service. It's millions of hours of service to the state of California, and it could have such a positive impact on our communities.
Wow.
So I think that's something that we definitely want to move forward with. I think the other thing is, and it's is not lack of participation, but it still is disappointing that we have 100,000 fewer girls playing high school sports than boys.
Yeah.
And I know everyone wants to point to the sport of football, and that yes, we have an additional 90,000 more. But that's not a reason to not continue to find ways and avenues to engage in sports for girls, because the data that's out there shows that the benefits are immense. Yeah. And I think we have to continue to push forward with that area as well.
Have there been any insights maybe into different types of sports, whether it's adding new sports for female student athletes, or maybe an emphasis to try and drive more student athletes to those female sports that currently exist?
Yeah, I think you just hit the nail on the head. I go, obviously, there's sports out there that I know down in San Diego, they're having the conversation about trying to propose beach volleyball. It's an NCAA scholarship sport. And so, and in California, it's something that we should certainly look at. There are states that are starting to engage in girls flag football. And something like that. But I think what you had mentioned before was most important is, even if there are no new sports added in the near future, it's simply making sure that teachers, coaches, parents are encouraging girls to get involved in sport or involved in something outside the classroom. And, we want them to encourage both girls and boys, obviously. But, a lot of times all you simply have to do with a student is ask them to get involved. They're waiting for the invitation. And to say that, hey, look, even if this is new, you can do it. I'm going to help you do it. And then, make sure their team embraces them and doesn't criticize and brings them into the fold. Kids want to feel part of something. And I think sports is a very unique way of doing that.
Absolutely. The power of sport, the ability to have these teachers and coaches impart courage in these young student athletes to try and get out there and try their hand at a new sport and empower them along the way. It's so important. I couldn't agree with you more.
Right.
Well, Ron, as we head down the home stretch here, I guess I'll open it up to a message of positivity. Is there something that you would want to share with any of our listeners? We have coaches and athletic directors at the high school and college level across the country that are listening. What message would you share with them today?
Sure. Before that, I want to make sure to say a quick thank you to all of our first responders out there, to people that are still making our country move forward at this time. Our doctors, our nurses, all of our healthcare professionals, our policemen, firefighters. I have a brother that's in the San Francisco Police Department, and I know firsthand what people like that are doing on a daily basis, all the way down to food service, grocery workers. I mean, there's so many people that are putting themselves out there at risk for the betterment of their community, and we appreciate that. As far as a message, I think we have to make it loud and clear that high school sports aren't going to go anywhere. It's a difficult time, and people are worried that other organizations may take our place. It's not going to happen. There's nothing that replaces playing high school sports, because you're playing for more than yourself. Yeah. You're playing for your school, you're playing for your teammates, your coaches, and your community in general. And, think of all the alums that go back to their high school gyms, their fields, their pools, and point to that banner on the wall when they were part of that team, and even if they didn't win a championship, you go back and think about all the reunions that take place where they tell stories of a team that maybe never won a game, but they're not talking about that. They're talking about, oh, I remember that bus trip. Remember we did this. Remember when we had that experience as a team where we bonded as a team. That's not going to disappear, and only high school sports can provide that.
Absolutely. The power of moments in high school athletics. Well said, Ron. Well, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your vision for the CIF, your thoughts on just high school athletics overall, your experiences, and obviously how important leadership is to you and how you're choosing to lead, especially right now. So, Ron, you're always welcome to come back on. We'll be excited to have you join us again, hopefully when things get back to some sense of normality here down the road. And again, we appreciate your partnership, and I can tell you our team will be ready to support every student athlete and coach as they get back into their, either on the field or on the court, in the pool, and their various, their various efforts with regards to athletics. So again, thanks for coming on today, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
No, thanks, Sean. Anytime. Be happy to be on. I thank you guys for what you do for our membership and our schools as well, and how you support high school athletics.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Ron. Thanks again.
All right.